The tragic deaths of the three teens have further inflamed relations between the Israelis and Palestinians. 3 months ago, each side had resumed peace negotiations. Now Israel is carrying out airstrikes, and Hamas is reportedly threatening that, quote, the gates of hell will open on the Prime Minister if he launches a war against Hamas. Joining us now from New York is Raghida Dergham. She's a columnist and senior diplomatic correspondent for the London-based Al-Hayat newspaper. And here with me in Washington, we're joined by Dan Arbell, a scholar in residence at the Center for Israeli Studies at American University. Thanks to both of you for being with us. Dan, let me start with you. We've got 4 people killed now, 3 Israeli teenagers, tragic deaths. We now have a Palestinian teenager who was abducted and killed as well. This has led to protests in Jerusalem. You've just returned from Israel just hours ago. What's the mood like there, and where is this all going?
Well, it's a very tense time, very emotional time in Israel. As I was leaving, the burial of those 3 youngsters who were kidnapped and brutally killed took place, and the entire nation is mourning, and it's a very problematic time in Israel. The government of Israel has launched a threefold operation, one focusing on the Hamas, those directly involved in the kidnapping, second against Hamas infrastructures and terrorists in the West Bank, and third, focusing on trying to target those in the Hamas organization in the Gaza Strip responsible for the rocket launching against the southern parts of Israel.
Okay, Raghida, what is your take on this? We've heard from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He is saying that Hamas will pay. This violence is going to escalate, isn't it?
It will escalate in as far as the Israelis would escalate it, because obviously every teenager killed, Israeli or Palestinian, that is condemnable act. It needs to be condemned. It has been condemned. The leadership of the Palestinian Authority, President Mahmoud Abbas, condemned the killing of the 3 Israeli teenagers, as should Prime Minister Netanyahu condemn the killing of the Palestinian teenagers. So that is the mourning of the families should be respected. Absolutely, the facts should be found. There shouldn't be a rush to concluding prematurely who committed this crime against the 3 Israeli teenagers. The Israeli government decided that it's Hamas. I'm not so sure that this has been established independently, but it looks like the Israeli government is jumping on this horrible, horrible occasion to use it to its own advantage, to disengage Hamas from the Palestinian Authority in terms of the government that is now leading the Palestinians and leading the negotiations with the Israelis towards peace. So I think it is really an unfortunate reaction that such a tragedy is being used for political ends. And I think really it's time to calm down a bit and make sure you do not incite people any further, because if it gets out of hand, it's everybody's loss.
Right, Dan, a lot for you to respond to there. Firstly, let me ask you, what kind of evidence and proof have the Israelis come up with in accusing Hamas of carrying out this?
To the best of my understanding, there is clear proof and evidence that Hamas is behind the operation, and those who were masterminded the kidnapping are directly members of Hamas of the Hebron cell in the town of Hebron. There's clear evidence that Israel has, that it is shared with the United States and other allies around the world, of the Hamas's direct responsibility to this horrible crime.
Okay, I just want to stop you there because we do have a response from Hamas. Let's watch this response, and then I want to get your take on that. Let's watch.
The story of the disappearance of the settlers and the 3 deaths is Israel's version only. It's unreasonable to accuse the Palestinian people in the case of the disappearance of Israeli settlers. The occupation is trying to use this story to justify its extensive war against our people, against resistance, and against Hamas.
So that goes to the point that Raghida was making there, that this is being used for political ends.
You know, this is a very difficult time, as I said, and I agree with Raghida that this is not the time to start. This is not a time for politics right now. I agree that all sides should exercise restraint, that right now the deaths of these 3 teenagers, which is very regrettable, and the death of the Palestinian youngster is very regrettable. It should be condemned, should not be accepted according to any standard. Having said that, those directly involved in masterminding and kidnapping those 3 Israeli soldiers should pay, and those who are behind them should be paying a heavy price. And that is what Israel is focusing on right now.
Okay, Raghida, you want to say something?
Again, I just want to say something. I mean, again, it's obvious there is a rush to conclude that it is Hamas. Look, I'm no Hamas lover. Everybody knows, everybody who reads me, they would know that I'm very critical of Hamas. So, but this is not a clear case. Hamas has not claimed responsibility. They're not going to do something like this and then just let it then duck. At any rate, there's other organizations that claim the responsibility. And the point is, let's go back to very small facts that are very big on the ground. There has been a reaction by some Israelis, some in the government, saying, oh, you know what, we should build more settlements now as a reaction to the killing of the 3 teenagers. I think this is absolutely not only illegal, it is to be condemned that people think of building more settlements. Settlements are illegal. Settlements are an act of an aggression against the people who live in that part of the world. And I think it's about time to go back to basics, for the Israelis to understand that there is a way out of this terrible situation with the Palestinians. It is about ending occupation. Unless and until Israel understands that it has this option for a 2-state solution, ending occupation and stopping the settlements, because the settlements are the thorn in the negotiations, and then unless that happens, I think we'll see more tragedy, unfortunately, and I think we're going to live to regret that the Israelis did not pocket this offer of the 2-state solution.
All right, Dan, is it time for both sides to take a step back, let the tension subside a bit, and look at the bigger picture here and say, look, we need to move forward now. This actually gives us reason to resolve this conflict.
Well, absolutely. I think that we should look at the short term, and what we see now, which is happening, is focusing on how to bring about justice to those 3 youngsters who were killed, and these operations should be in this context. And obviously, I expect that in the short term, we would see a continuation of this campaign. However, I do agree with you that we should be looking at the long term, medium to long term, and we should find a way of getting the negotiations back on track. I think the Israeli government is very keen on pursuing the 2-state solution. I think no one in Jerusalem has given up on the 2-state solution. Those voices that Raghida has been mentioning, those are politicians on all sides of the aisle, just like the Palestinian politicians say things. It does not mean necessarily that Israel will launch a new campaign of building. Right now, settlements are an issue for the negotiations, part of the final status issues. Once negotiations are back on track, settlements issues, the issue is one of the issues that will be discussed. At the moment, though, I do agree that short term, there's a need to focus on the operation, but very quickly after that, to look at ways of bringing back negotiators to the table.
All right, Raghida wants to respond to what you're saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, look, I mean, you can't tell me that you want to go on negotiating and building settlements at the same time and attribute that to people, you know, on the extreme right or the extreme left. It doesn't matter. The fact is that there has been an involvement, a very serious involvement by the United States at the level of the Secretary of State. First, it was at the level of the President to try to get the Israelis and the Palestinians to work together. The fact of the matter is that the Israelis continue to build settlements, and you can't have a 2-state solution when you're changing the situation on the ground through more illegal settlements.
So I want to say that. Secondly, you can say illegal 7 more times, it does not make it illegal. Settlements are legal.
Well,
they were upheld by the Israeli courts. You can say illegal 7 more times, that's fine.
Law.
Settlements are legal. And settlements are part of final status discussions. And once you have final status discussions, then you can start talking about the settlements. You can say 2 more times illegal.
These are illegal settlements according to the international law, decisions by the international community. They have been considered different ways, and even by the ally, the United States, saying, stop them, please, stop them, let's move on. But then you go on and build them. And then you just say, okay, this is is our right, and this is not correct. Now, secondly, we need to respect the choice of the Palestinians. If they are going to have the Palestinian Authority, if they think they need to have Hamas in their government in order to deliver the two-state solution, we should accept that, as we accept there are extremists in the Israeli government. So, you know what? That goes both ways. If there is an intent for a solution, let's have it. Stop settlement building.
All right, Dan,
and get to the table. And
you can respond to that, but we're going to have to take a break right now. We'll be back with our discussion.